What's up, y'all? It's your boy Smaqs, and you already know what time it is. It's the Cage No More podcast. And today, we got the man, the myth, the legend. But before I get to that, I just want to let you guys know that this podcast is brought to you by the Renaissance Ranch in Bluffdale, Utah, a leading men's treatment center in the state of Utah. So anybody who's suffering from addiction or suffering from incarceration and you need some help and you want to start your journey, make sure you tap into www.renaissanceranch.com. And like I said, we got the man. We got Alema Harrington in the building, man.
What's happening?
Appreciate you so much, Uso.
Oh, man,
I can call you Uso, right?
Absolutely.
Samoan roots, yeah, bro. Absolutely.
Let me shout out the ranch, too. You know, I spent 5 years at the ranch working there as a sud-C.
Love that.
Went back and got my substance use disorder counseling degree. We'll talk more about that.
Absolutely.
But one of the sayings when I came through the treatment program, I got sober in Hawaii. The place is called Sand Island Treatment Center, which is on the Sand Island by the airport in Honolulu International Airport. We had a saying there, which was glory to God and gratitude to the house.
Man.
And I'll tell you what, if you've come through the ranch, you are one of the Green Berets.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you that is hardcore treatment,
Absolutely.
Big book, 12-step, and all about God. And so, you know, glory to God, gratitude to the house, whatever house that might be that you hail from. I think that it's important for us to share our gratitude for the ones that have helped us along the way. Because if we could have done this on our own, man, we would have done it a long time ago. And we required some help.
We need that.
And that's a blessing. That's part of the journey for all of us.
Yeah. I love that, man. Alema. So, man, dude, so with the podcast, right, my objective behind the podcast,
Yes.
right? It's Cage No More. We talk everything addiction, everything incarceration, and kind of just give people the beneficial information of what we utilized, right? From hearing our story to through our struggles and pulling ourselves out of the trenches, man.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and start your story, Alema? Let's hear the foundations of Alema.
Well, for those who don't know, I come from Samoan roots on my father's side, and then Palangi roots on my mom's side. So Haole or Caucasian, for those who don't understand that terminology. My mom is from Orem. My dad is from Samoa. He was born in Samoa. Two pretty powerful clans in Samoa, the Ta'a and Suapaia clan.
Yep.
And both chief clans, right? But the Suapaia clan, interestingly enough, my great-great-great-grandfather, Saimasina Tuipelehaki Suapaia, became the first patriarch in the church for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in his conversion to the Mormon church, he surrendered his chief's title because there was a lot of prejudice against the church at the time. And there were multiple Christian denominations that were coming in and trying to baptize members in the area. So, but the LDS faith did not have a lot of support. But my great-great-great-grandfather, I just call him my grandpa from this point on, right? Saimasina, he becomes the first patriarch of the church and was set apart by David O. McKay as the first patriarch. And then one of his sons, Tine Suapaia, end up being like the bodyguard for the missionaries that come through Samoa. And because the missionaries would come and they would get attacked by some of the other villages
other denominations.
Because it's different denomination. And so my grandpa Tine was legendary. He's this big.
Is it Western or American Samoa?
I'm pretty sure was American Samoa.
Oh, okay. 684.
And I should know my genealogy better than that.
No, you good.
But so they ended up going to leaving their place, that they had where the village was, they went to kind of a peninsula that was a little isolated.
Really?
And it allowed them to.
So they migrated.
Yeah, they migrated there, and then my grandpa Tine would accompany the missionaries as they went through Samoa, and he would carry their luggage. And just big.
Man.
And then eventually my father, who is a product, of course, of that lineage, ends up moving to Hawaii when he was 3.
Oh, okay.
And then my grandfather and my grandmother end up getting divorced. My grandmother marries a guy that was there, Roy Harrington, for during World War II, and that's how we have the name Harrington.
Oh, okay.
But my father was a legendary athlete in Hawaii. I was a good athlete in Hawaii. My dad was a legend. running back at Punahou High School, which was a private
Shout out
school.
Punahou.
And my dad was able to get a scholarship because they were living in, Halawa housing, and, they were in the projects.
Oh, yeah, bro.
So they didn't have the money to go to Punahou, but because he was such a great athlete, he was able to get to Punahou and then eventually a scholarship to Stanford University and majored in history. So, there's a lot of that influence in my life.
Yeah.
And my father became a teacher, got his teaching certificate when my mom and dad got married. They moved to Hawaii. And my dad started teaching at Punahou, and then moonlighting as a kind of just a luau host in Waikiki.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually got a job as kind of a bad guy on the original Hawaii Five-0. And a lot of people don't know that there was an original Hawaii Five-0.
Before it got really televised.
Yeah. So back in the day, that ran for 10 seasons. It was one of the longest running series in, TV history at the time.
Wow.
And then I think Hill Street Blues beat that. And I'm talking about some of these, TV shows that people they don't remember those. But my dad eventually became a regular on that program as Detective Ben Kukui, and he had a run on that show. And then he parlayed that into his own luau show in Waikiki for 20 years. So, I grew up upper middle class and, was, allowed a lot of benefits of, luxuries of life. We never wanted for anything. We, had a nice house in Manoa, which is on the town side of Oahu.
Yeah, expensive.
And I have a twin brother.
Oh, really?
Twin brother that I grew up with. I call him my partner from the womb. And so... And then we became athletes and student athletes at Punahou High School. Eventually ended up at BYU playing football there.
BYU Hawaii or BYU?
No, BYU here in Utah. And so then, I was familiar with Utah because my mom is from here. So we had visited plenty of times. My mom's parents were still in Utah and family in Utah. So this became kind of my second home.
Yeah.
But I came here in the early 80s. I got to BYU in 1984. I was a member of that national championship team.
Barely born.
Yeah, as a running back on that team.
Oh, nice.
Went undefeated and played Michigan in the Holiday Bowl, and we ended up with a national championship. So an historic time and just an amazing coach in Lavelle Edwards. But that's where my introduction to drugs and alcohol really happened. When I was in high school.
Oh, in college.
Yeah, in high school, I guess you could say I dabbled a little bit. But I got in some big trouble my freshman year in high school. Almost got kicked out of Punahou. And I still remember my dad coming. I got in some trouble. I was hanging out with some guys that had stolen some stuff and were smoking weed and that kind of thing. And my dad came to the school, and they were going to kick me out of school because I was involved in this little this robbery gang thing that was happening, right? And I was going to have to go to Roosevelt High School, which is down the street from Punahou. And so it was kind of a wake-up call for me, and that's when I really found athletics, and football and track and field were really, I lettered in football, track, and in basketball, but I wasn't a great basketball player, but football was my thing.
Okay.
And fortunate enough to be an all-state running back, leading rusher in the state my senior year, and get recruited to go to BYU.
Man, that's cool.
So some blessings that came with that, and I had straightened up my life. And it wasn't necessarily, I was born and raised in the LDS faith, and so I was pretty straight, as far as all of that goes.
Okay.
But it wasn't until, the end of my senior year and kind of, that senior mentality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'm going to
about
party
to be
a little
an adult.
bit. And then I come on my recruiting trip to BYU. They offer us a scholarship, and I end up at BYU. And to that point in my athletic career, I'd had multiple injuries, some, semi-serious. I never blew out my knee or anything where I required surgery. But I'd never been introduced to any narcotics during my whole high school career. And I drank a little bit, dabbled a little bit, smoked weed, never liked weed anyway, so it wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
But was drinking a little bit. And then when I got up to BYU, I had a minor injury, don't even remember what it was. And I was prescribed Percocet and Soma.
Man.
And so that was my first introduction to narcotics. And I still remember, I tell this story often, man, I remember exactly where I was when that Percocet hit my system.
Yeah.
And I was dealing with all kinds of stuff that we all deal with, or just anxiety, and any freshman at any school or any new environment where you know all of those kind of those voices in your head that are, telling you you're not good enough. And all of those things,
social pressures,
amplified when I got to BYU. Because I'm, a celebrated running back coming out of Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I get to BYU, and bro, I'm telling you, everybody was everything from wherever they came from.
Absolutely.
And I was like, dang. And we were coming off a season with Steve Young where he had some great success and then ended up drafted in the USFL with some big money. At that time, I think it was like $20 million, which was a huge contract then. And so as I, was going through all of this kind of anxiety and feeling of self-doubt, I'm at Helaman Halls, which is one of the, the dorms in BYU where the athletes stay. And I'd been prescribed Percocet and Soma, and, one of the older, my team members told me, "Oh, what'd you get?" And I told him what I got. I said, "Oh, yeah, that's some good stuff." And then he told me what to take. Not the doctor, like, it was my teammate that told me, "Oh, this is what you take." And I remember I took the pills, and I was standing kind of in the hallway of Helaman Halls in John Hall when that Percocet hit my system, Brian. Yeah. I was like, woo, man, I'm telling you, it was life-changing for me. Yeah. Because all of my self-doubt and my anxiety and just those feelings of like, I don't fit in, I don't belong, all of those things were erased.
Absolutely.
And I genuinely thought, bro, like, this is the answer. Like, this is what I was looking for. And it didn't happen overnight, but eventually, my brain, as an alcoholic and addict, my brain had started to shift, and that became my solution for all of my problems. And even though those pain medications, narcotics, opioids are prescribed for physical pain, what it did for me is it quieted or it calmed and treated my emotional pain that I was feeling, at the time. And part of that, going back to, my origin story, my dad, living in the shadow of my dad was, there was some weight to that.
Absolutely, some pressure.
Right? Because he's this big time celebrity in Hawaii and beyond because of Hawaii 5-0, and then he had been on Charlie's Angels, and he had been on all these other shows, the Jeffersons, that whenever he came through Hawaii.
Those are big shows at that time.
These were big deals. So I'm living to a degree in that show. I still remember being in John Hall and the TV being on and Hawaii 5-0 is on, and my dad is on TV, right? And it's kind of like, that's kind of a big deal.
I bet.
And so I felt a little bit of that pressure, and that was easy to deal with when I was successful in high school.
Yeah.
But when I get to BYU and I'm not playing, and I was like, man, what is going on here? But the drugs and the alcohol, and I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, but I am an alcoholic. I drank like an alcoholic. Those things, that's where it started for me, and eventually spiraled out of control.
Yeah. So when you say not playing, or do you mean like you just got on the team and because a lot of athletes think going from high school they're going to get right on the starting squad.
Bro.
So are you saying that you weren't starting at that moment?
No. So I wasn't even getting playing time. My freshman year, I never even saw the field. And I played, we had a JV team at that time. So I played on this JV team. And even then I was like sharing time with another dude. And I was like, it was unfamiliar territory for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. But the drugs and the alcohol were my escape, my release. And the drugs and the alcohol helped to numb that feeling, that insecurity and that feeling of not good enough. And eventually, I had a good sophomore season, played quite a bit as a backup to Lakehe Muli, who was a legendary running back coming out of Kahuku High School in Hawaii, and was looking at a good chance to either start or for sure get plenty of playing time my junior season coming out of my sophomore year. And then in that spring ball, I ended up rupturing a disc in my lower back at my Ep.4.
Man.
And I'm in Hawaii before the start of the season, and I couldn't lift my left leg. And so I called the trainer in Hawaii or in Utah. His name was George Curtis, wonderful man. And I said, bro, I'm having this issue with my leg. And they had been treating my back for a little bit, but hadn't really diagnosed it.
Yeah.
And he's like, it sounds like you got a drop foot and you got either a pinched nerve or something going on in your L4-5. They sent me to a neurologist in Hawaii, and they put me through a CAT scan at the time, which would be an MRI today.
Yep.
And they're like, "Are you ruptured the disc at your L4-5? We're gonna have to do surgery tomorrow. Like, we got to get in there now."
That's scary.
So, this kind of excitement and anticipation. I'm gonna play quite a bit. My junior season at BYU ends up, I have to redshirt because I have surgery during the off season. Tried to come back but couldn't that season. And so now I'm redshirting, and then my addiction just takes off from that point. And I played all of my years at BYU and had a redshirt season, so I have 5 years at BYU. And then at the end of my senior season, I played the last game for us. It was at Miami, and then we had a bowl game left. I flew home from Miami, and we got our asses kicked at Miami.
Yeah. Them boys play ball out there, man.
That was before. That was actually the precursor for Ty Detmer and his game against Miami that launched him to a Heisman Trophy.
Yep.
That was the home arrangement that we had. But when we played at Miami, man, they whooped us. And so I fly back to Hawaii and have a second surgery on my back. I get married in this time frame. I have a little girl, my daughter Teni'iti, who is now mid-30s.
Oh, there you go.
And she was just a newborn. And so I'm going through all of that transition of now I'm no longer playing football. Yeah. And I had a decent career at BYU, enough to have a few pictures on my wall and some rings in my jewelry box and those things. But it certainly wasn't the career that I had anticipated.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to have this great career and on to the NFL, which so many of us have.
Absolutely.
We think that's what's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. Then when it doesn't happen, man, we're not prepared for, okay, what do I do now?
Yep.
And so now I'm a young married guy, and I married a girl from Hawaii that was in my stake in Hawaii, and it just fell apart. I mean, the whole thing just fell apart. She eventually left, took my daughter back to Hawaii, and
were you actively using at that time?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So at this point, I'm using probably 100 pills a day.
Ooh,
right.
Wee.
And I say this all the time. The hardest job that anybody will ever have is to be a full-time addict. Like you're trying to secure 100 pills a day, through multiple doctors, and I'm driving down to California to see another doctor and all these kinds of things. And I had, all I had to do was just show them my CAT scan, and they're like, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
And so it just spirals out of control for me. And, I basically lost everything in that process and go through multiple treatments. But here's the thing, and I think a lot of us can relate to this. Even though it was falling apart like that, my ego defense mechanisms that were protecting my disease, because that was in my mind keeping me alive,
keeping you moving.
It's all trying to justify my use. And even though it's all falling apart and my wife and my daughter are gone, I'm still trying to justify in my mind how somehow like this is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And so fortunately, I end up in Sand Island Treatment Center the first time.
Sand Island? Out there in Hawaii?
Hawaii. So I go back to Hawaii. My mom, God bless my mom. She's an angel. She's back in Hawaii. She's praying for her son, and she gets this inspiration to call Sand Island Treatment Center. So long story short, I end up in there, which is exactly where I need. It's a hardcore program, 9 months on facility, 2-year program. And so I get back there, and I get introduced to the principles of recovery. Yeah. And it changed my life. And that wasn't long term. I had 8 years of sobriety, but then I relapsed again. So I think that my recovery story is similar to a lot of us, man. It's kind of a step by step and a journey and a process of continual self-discovery. And now as a substance use disorder counselor, I deal with guys coming off relapses all the time. Yeah. And the question is always, okay, what did you learn from that experience? And what can I share with you with my experience, strength, and hope that can help you, continue to navigate this? Because whenever somebody comes back into treatment after a relapse, and you experience this being in that world, man, you give that brother a big
absolutely.
Man, thank God you're alive.
You got to give him that love.
This disease is trying to kill us.
Absolutely.
And so if you're still alive, then we still got a chance. And so you just try to get back to those, foundational principles, which for me has been just a very different, intimate, and personal relationship with my higher power.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the higher power part is super important, because a lot of times for ourselves, we don't have the confidence to be able to pull ourselves out of the depths of what we're dealing with. And I
get the allergy.
No, you good. So I tell a lot of guys at the ranch, our stories, because you got different lives, right? You got guys who are coming maybe from incarceration, who are suffering from addiction, heroin use, straight heroin use. And then you got guys who are blue collar, got jobs, work every day, but suffering from opiates, right? And they're coming into the same house, and they're trying to find common ground to be able to learn from each other. And I always tell them, I'm like, dude, our lives are subjective, but we're still dealing with the same ailments that are causing us to lose our wives, to lose our kids, to lose our family, to lose our loved ones. And absolutely right. I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of other treatment centers. Is we have them dive into their higher power, and not necessarily any denomination. Obviously, the ranch started off with the LDS, and there's a strong LDS faith in it, but it's about zeroing in to your higher power, and that's super important.
And what that is, and for so many of us, that's reevaluating, for me it was at least, reevaluating what my relationship with my higher power was. And I share this sometimes with guys that are trying to navigate and figure that thing out. Because for me, I still remember being in treatment, at Sand Island Treatment Center. And I had been there, gone through detox, and then my counselor had come up to me. We were walking off facility down to the beach park or something. And so I'm walking, my counselor, his name was Dennis. He comes up to me and goes, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm doing pretty good. I'm starting to get my legs under me and going through the withdrawals and the aches and the diarrhea and all that stuff that anybody that's gone through opioid withdrawal understands." And he said, "Well, good." And he said, how's your step work? I said, "I'm good." And I'd been there like a week or something. I'm on step 3.
You speeding through this?
Like, what? I said, "Yeah, I'm on step 3. He said, "How are you already to step 3? Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood." I was like, "Oh, you don't understand." I'm telling my counselor, "You don't understand, bro. I was born and raised in religion, so I have a good relationship with God, and I understand this thing." And he's like, "Alema, if you had that relationship that you claim that you have with God, you wouldn't be here, bro." So I want you to slow your roll.
Absolutely.
And reevaluate what that relationship looks like. And I think for so many of us, this is a new, part of our lives that we hadn't necessarily, like, I was born and raised in the church, so I was, I had these assumptions of what it was and what people were telling me it was, and I just assumed that's what it was, and then, the examples that I had around me or whatever. And when I really evaluated it, I didn't have any, and none of us do, have any real frame of reference for what our Heavenly Father is. So, just by default, what I did was I projected my earthly father, who's this big Samoan man, right, and very fa Samoa. I projected that onto my Heavenly Father. And so my Heavenly Father was disappointed. He was frustrated. He was angry. He was impatient.
Absolutely.
He was all of those things. I speak very respectfully of my father. I'm not saying that to criticize him, because we're all that. I mean, we're just humans, right? And so I was able to come to a new understanding of a higher power or a Heavenly Father, God, that was patient and unconditionally loved me regardless of what I had done and wanted the best for me. Like, all of these things were new concepts for me, but were breakthroughs for me, because as I went through my step work and did eventually get to my step 4 and my step 5, and I'm having this conversation with God, myself, and another human being, I'm admitting the exact nature of my wrongs, and then feeling this sense from both my sponsor or the person I was doing my step 5 with, and from my Heavenly Father is like, okay, like I can almost feel this sense of God telling me, okay, Alema, now you're being honest with me. I can work with that. Yeah. Right?
I can start
and
with
that. That was a game changer for me.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
You know, in the ranch, guys who are coming, we suffer from addiction, right? And we hit rock bottom. We make the choice that we want something different in our life. It's only natural that we try to speed through.
Oh, yeah.
We try to rush through, right? And I tell the guys, like you were saying, you have to slow down, because my thing with my sobriety, right? I have to really be going at a pace to where I can see the signs that my higher powers give me. I got to see the signs that God's given me. So when these guys are trying to rush through their step work, and I'm just like, bro, you got to slow down. You're trying to take the wheel and do it yourself. That's no different than what you've been doing your whole life, and it hasn't been working. Yeah. You got to allow yourself to immerse yourself in your day, immerse yourself in your minute, immerse yourself in your steps, step by step, to where you're able to get the message that God's giving you. Yeah. Because when you're speeding through, it's, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, man, I totally understand that.
Yeah, and it is. It's a completely different approach to it. And I tell our community all the time, if you were to look at this group that suffer from the disease of alcoholism and addiction, I look at our community and our population as some of the most intelligent, resourceful,
absolutely
talented,
totally agree
people
with
that you'll ever come across. And that is a blessing and a curse at the same time, because for so many of us, my good has been other people's great. Yeah. Meaning that me just kind of half-assing it sometimes is
which we
better
do.
Than some people could do if they gave everything that they had. And we kind of get away with that for such a long period of time that we don't realize that we're really shortcutting the process.
Absolutely.
And we're not giving our all. So, to go through the recovery process at an appropriate pace, which is going to be different for every person, but it is typically much slower than you're used to. I'm used to showing up. You're used to showing up, and it's like within very short period of time, I've mastered whatever this thing is. This recovery is a journey that is a daily thing, and there's a lot of self-evaluation and accountability that is part of it, which
big part,
which takes time and takes being quiet. And for a lot of us, that's kind of been, for me, it had been a very uncomfortable space. I wanted to just keep moving.
Absolutely.
Right? And this program, the 12-step program, it encouraged me. It doesn't, not because we're not forced to do anything, but I was encouraged in the process to just slow down. Yeah.
Man, and that's a big thing. I relate it to, I compare it to a CEO or somebody who's running a Fortune 500 company, right? He didn't just run through life and get there, right? And I tell the guys all the time, when you're trying to rush the process, you're missing the necessary tools to be able to sit at that table with the CEO and understand and speak the language. Now, you just rush through your process. Say you get to the table, say you get up there. Now you don't understand the jargon. Now you don't understand the language of what it takes to sustain sobriety, right? And so back to your story, right? You were losing everything with your wife, and because I want to get to eventually how your comeback.
For over 20 years, Renaissance Ranch has been on the front lines,
battling the darkness and disease of addiction.
It has been our mission and passion
to help men reclaim themselves and remember who they truly are.
Fathers, husbands,
friends,
leaders,
sons,
and brothers. The road has been paved, and the recovery journey is real.
We've all experienced the journey from addiction and darkness back to the light of recovery.
We do it together.
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 Let us fight with you and help you find yourself again. We are the Brotherhood of Renaissance Ranch.
We are the Brotherhood of Renaissance Ranch.
We are the Brotherhood of Renaissance Ranch. Join the fight today.
Yeah, so my comeback, and for me, the comeback happened at an accelerated pace, as it often does once we really buy into the program.
Yeah.
There's, the term that I use, there's a quickening that takes place when we're truly operating like I'm going to do God's will. Like,
high
God,
frequency
you are in charge.
operation.
I'm showing up and I'm doing my, playing my role. And again, that becomes counterintuitive for any of us that are used to running the show. Like when I got to BYU and I had been a celebrated tailback in an offense that, I had, all these yards. And then I come to BYU and there's like, we're going to teach you how to block. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? So when I come into this recovery process, they're telling me, okay, you're no longer in charge. I'm like, what? Like, what is that? I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But once I understood that and started to buy into that, man, the things that happened in my life were miraculous. There's no other way to describe it, right?
Absolutely.
A miracle is God doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. And miraculous things started to happen in my life. Not the way I would have planned it, but because of God's plan, I mean, within 5-6 years, I am out of treatment. I have, graduated from being a weekend sports anchor in Hawaii to being a sports anchor here at the NBC affiliate Channel 5, KSL in Salt Lake City. And I'm covering the Olympics. I'm covering, the Utah Jazz going to back-to-back NBA finals. All of these things are happening in my career, in my family, my salvaged that marriage at the time. And we end up having 2 more kids. And, I'm going to fast forward through that because what happened in that process was I not quickly, this is over a course of 8 years, I am 8 years sober, and then I pick up a resentment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. At work, I pick up a resentment. And I just did this group down at Ardu last week or earlier this week. And the big book tells us resentment is the number one offender.
Absolutely.
It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. And we think that we can pick up a resentment and be justifiably angry about some situation, thinking, but if you had this situation, you'd be mad too. But we can't afford that.
Justifies it.
Right? And it goes on to say in the big book, it says, when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. And for us to drink is to die. That's exactly, bro.
Yeah.
What happened?
How it played out.
Because what happened was they promoted or they hired at Channel 5 a guy in front of me that I thought that should be my job. And so I was upset about that and felt like that was unfair.
Yeah, the ego was creeping up.
Ego was there. And then I had other people. It's like, oh, man, I can't believe they hired that guy over you. You're so much better. I'm like, right. It's like all of this kind of crazy stuff that we do to justify the resentment. And what it did was it shut me off from the sunlight of the spirit or from my relationship with God, because now I'm mad at God that this is not working out the way that I had planned it. And all of a sudden now I don't have the thing that was keeping me sober, which was not Alema. No. It was God. And I'm getting rid of that relationship because I don't like something that's happening right now in my life. Yeah. And I'm telling you at that point, my relapse is like, it's just off the charts. And that's exactly when OxyContin was introduced into the market. So now I still have this back issue, and I'm now in 2 pain clinics and eventually buying heroin on the street. And I'm still working at Channel 5. Like, I'm doing this stuff, and I'm buying dope down the street at, right next to West High School. Used to be a little horseshoe motel called Temple View Motel. I got a dealer over there. I'm buying drugs back. And then the block was over at Pioneer Park. So I'm over at Pioneer Park scoring dope. And then
you were
going the 6 and 10
out
o'clock
there.
news.
Yeah.
And eventually, I'm online pharmacies delivering pills to the freaking station, bro. Is like the insanity of it all is, and my marriage is falling apart, and eventually I lose that marriage.
So how were you feeling? Because we get a lot of guys who I talk about, bro, when you have a relapse, it's important for you to pay attention to what you're feeling at that moment, because you got to remember that.
Yeah.
What kind of feelings were you going through? Like shame?
And part of it was shame. And I think this is an important thing, to have a conversation about, because,
absolutely,
for all of us, we're all, struggling in one way or another. And sometimes when we, achieve or are gifted, but think that we're achieving a certain number of months, years, whatever, we feel like, okay, now I have to protect that. And if I'm screwing up, I can't tell anybody. And that's probably the most dangerous place that we can be, is to not have, a group, for me, a sober support system, right? There's people in my life that I can be down and dirty with, like, bro, this is what I'm feeling. And I'm thinking about using, or I use. I'm
using.
I'm using. It's like, I need some freaking help. And because of that ego coming in, it's like, oh man, it's like, I can't tell you the number of times in a relapse where I was, I can't tell anybody, and I'll fix this thing on my own, and then I'll talk about it later, or I'll never tell anybody. And I've been blessed to have people in my life, Christian Smith or H.R. Brown, and H.R. Brown,
love H.R.
founder,
great man,
Renaissance Ranch.
Shout out to H.R.
Scott Kinney. There's these men in my life, and my brother, that I've been able to just like be honest with. Because the breakthrough for me was when I was in the middle of a relapse 13 and a half years ago now, and it was alcohol. And, I had gotten divorced, and now I'm remarried, and now I'm trying to hold that thing together, and, secretly I'm drinking. And I'm still doing a radio show. I mean, there's all these things going on in my life, and I felt like I just can't tell anybody. I end up at an LDS 12-step meeting. I meet a guy, Christian Smith, and he was such a blessing in my life, because he was that guy that I could talk to that wasn't going to judge me.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't care that I was on TV or all these other things that were going on in my life. He said, whatever's going on, bro, just reach out to me. And at that time, I would, think about calling somebody, and I said, well, I'll call him after I get this tall boy and get my nerves calmed a little bit, which, we all go through.
Absolutely.
That. And that was the first time that I actually called somebody before I drank. I called Christian Smith. I'm like, bro, it's not, I think I'm going to drink. I'm not going to drink today. And I need some help. And so he told me, get in your car, drive over here. I'll meet you there. We'll go grab a soda. We'll take a drive. And my relapse didn't end right then, but that was the beginning of the end of my relapse. And I ended up in an IOP, or like an outpatient program, and was able to get back on track. And I share that message because I think it's critical for all of us that are in recovery, that as we go through life and we have our struggles, like, I need guys like a Brian Heaton that I can just reach out to and just like, bro, like, this is what I'm truly dealing with, that can relate. It's like, for me, Drew Red, who runs Ardu, is, and a lot of these guys are ranch guys. Yeah. Right? And they
I was just talking about that.
They understand the brotherhood. That's the beauty of the community,
bro. The
family.
For
us, the culture that we've built at Ardu is all about that. It's like, okay, we need to be able to have an environment where you feel safe.
Absolutely.
And there's not going to be a judgment on it, because, you start to pile up years, right? You stack days, and then you're stacking months, and you're stacking years. And then, then you have a relapse or a slip or whatever happens. And it's like, oh, I can't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But if I have guys that I can be honest with, and I've had situations like that where I had to call my guy, I'm like, bro, like, I just drank. And like, I need some help. And it's like, let's get together. Let's talk about it. What happened? Okay, what do we do from here? Right? And, the blessing is, okay, it stopped at that one incident.
Yeah.
But those are the things can turn into, years.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For us, relapse, you don't know, bro. It's going to take your life.
It's always around the corner, man.
Exactly.
And so this, I'm thinking about, right? So pretend that we're Polynesian, right? So this might be a little pivot, but so we've had guys that have come through the ranch for being addicted to kava.
Yeah.
So right, and you've had alcohol addiction. What are your thoughts on kava?
Yeah. So my thoughts on kava is like, and that was never my thing either.
Yeah.
But it's like anything that is now starting to control my life.
Yes.
Like, because kava obviously is a ceremonial drink,
Absolutely.
and that what it's is meant for that.
For sure.
It has a purpose, but if I understand my brain and the way that my brain operates, and it flips like that, where it starts to
gotta
control
have it.
me.
Yep.
Right. And because with the alcoholic brain, the part that is what kind of differentiates alcoholism from somebody that just drinks, for me, it's like what happens in my brain is the shift that says, okay, we need more of that or we're gonna die. Like,
Yep.
I need more of that to survive.
Yep, that thought process behind it.
And so that for me, kava and anything else that fits
Becomes
into
that,
category
yep.
becomes that. Now that becomes my God.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I can't have anything in front of me and in relationships, whatever. Nothing can come between me and my God. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I got was somebody that told me, we build our lives around our recovery, not the other way around. So I don't build my recovery around my life.
Yeah.
I build my life around my recovery. My recovery is my foundation.
Absolutely.
And everything else revolves around that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
man. I love that. So you end up eventually being a sudsy at the ranch. How did that happen? So what made you decide actually to go get your sudsy?
Well, I get remarried. I'm having a conversation with my wife, and she's from here in Utah. And look, where I'm talking about, I'm going to put together this memoir, which I had put together kind of it's about 75 pages of just my life experience. And I'm thinking, like, it'd probably be beneficial. And I was doing some work as a volunteer in various, in speaking and those kinds of things, right? And I thought it might be beneficial for me to put some letters behind my name just for, to
credentials,
accolades, right?
Yeah.
And so we decide, okay, I'm going to go and get my sudsy. At that time, it was called the LSAC, Licensed Substance Abuse Counselor. So I go back to UVU and I get this degree.
Okay.
And the intention was for me to just have these letters behind my name. I wasn't going to practice. But in my internship, I end up at a couple of places, but the ranch was one of them.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm starting to do some counseling as an intern as part of my internship and my practicum at the Renaissance Ranch. And I had heard about Renaissance Ranch before because I had some other people that had, known H.R. Brown, and they were trying to start another treatment facility for youth. And so I heard this reputation about H.R. Brown, who's my partner now in the Salila Foundation, which is our 501c3. And so I had been introduced to the ranch. I had heard the reputation before I even was at the ranch. And then I get to the ranch, man, and for me, it was the same feeling that I had at Sand Island Treatment Center. Strong alumni program.
Which is important.
A brotherhood, right? A true brotherhood. Because people can talk brotherhood, and, at the ranch you feel
absolutely
that brotherhood.
That energy for sure.
Absolutely. So if you've been in the barn, then you understand. And I was invited to go to a couple of meetings prior to being an intern there. And, I go into the barn and I was like, damn, this place got that spirit on fire in here,
through the
right?
staff all the way through the clients that are picking that energy up.
And so many of the guys that were now, working there had been clients at the ranch. They understood the culture of what the ranch was. And so I really feel blessed that I was able to get to the ranch first as an intern. And then when I was, started working, I started at the Phoenix, and the Phoenix was where I finished up my internship, and then I ended up working as a sudsy there. And then there was this insurance thing. This happens all the time in the recovery industry, where there was an insurance change with, I think it was Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they weren't paying or something. And so we had a financial issue kind of across the industry, but specifically at the Phoenix, we were taking a lot of that particular insurance. So they called me in. They're like, bro, we're going to have to cut your pay, or if there's another place you can go. So I get on the phone and I call a few different places. Mark Pepper was starting, Aqua was getting started, and then so I reach out to Tyson, and I called Tyson and I said, "Are you guys looking for a Sudsi?" And I still remember this conversation. He said, "We are if it's you."
That sounds like Tyson.
I had met Tyson right at the barn and at some alumni ranch stuff. And so that's how I end up at the ranch. And I have a great run there at the ranch for 5 years, working with Mark Pepper. He ended up working with us there, and Dave Callister and all of our characters that are part of our ranch family, Brian Heaton. Just what a blessing that was for me, because it was very reminiscent of what my experience at Sand Island Treatment Center was, which was a true brotherhood. And that was what I was looking for. That, like, I needed that. Absolutely. And the truth is, initially, as I tried to get my internship at the ranch, Callister, he brings me on as an intern, and then H.R. Brown finds out, and I was honest with them. At that time, I only had 6 months of clean time. Yeah. And he's like, "No, we can't bring somebody on that's doing counseling that's only got 6 months." So that's how I ended up at the Phoenix, but eventually I ended up back at the ranch. And I appreciate that. H.R. Brown and I are very good friends, and that was an important moment of, like, there's no special treatment in this thing, bro.
Absolutely not.
Because you're Alema Harrington, it's not like, okay, then these rules don't apply, which is an important message for all of us, because we all have this entitlement complex where it's like,
it's our show.
The rules are fantastic, and I think they're very important for everybody else, but not for me.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
So for me to be able to be kind of put in my place, like, bro, you're nothing special here. You go through the same process that we all do, and if we have, a rule that you have to have at least a year before you can work here, then that's the rule for everybody.
And that's a rule that they still carry to this day. I remember when I first came onto the ranch, I came on about almost 4 years ago. Yeah. And I got hired on as a private chef. Yeah. And I kind of just worked my way up through my experience, right? And I always, at first I didn't understand, hiring people who have to help people, right? Yeah. But handing out meds or whatever the situation is, who have suffered from addiction. How important do you think that is, to actually have someone that has come from that life to be able to give you the tools?
I think it's invaluable, and I tell this story sometimes. The first time I went through treatment, I had passed a prescription that I had forged or altered. Right, I altered the refills on it.
Oh, okay.
And the pharmacy wouldn't fill it, and I got scared, and I called the George Curtis, the trainer at BYU. I said, "Hey, George, I got a problem here. I think I have a pain management problem." I wasn't an addict, but I had a pain management issue. And because I thought the DEA was going to break down my door, I was going to jail for this. Yeah. And so he was able to get me into where I think it's Provo Behavioral is now.
Oh, okay.
That was a treatment center at the time. So he gets me into this treatment center, and I'm going through withdrawals, and I'm sitting here, I'm talking to their clinical director in his office, and he's a PhD, MD, all these different things with all the different plaques on his wall. I'm sitting there, I'm talking to him about withdrawal. I'm explaining what I'm going through. It's like, okay, I understand. I said, "Oh, have you been through withdrawal before?" He's like, "No, but I've read a lot about it." I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And that doesn't mean that people that have not dealt with, addiction personally cannot be helpful to our community. Yeah. But there is a huge difference between I hear you and I feel you. Yeah. And for us that have, walked this path already and are still walking the path of recovery, there's something special about that relationship with somebody. I think about our Savior Jesus Christ, and what he went through was so that he could understand our pain, and so that he could succor his people. I think one of our great gifts that we get in recovery as people that have been through that pain is now we have an opportunity as a tool in the hands of our Savior to be able to be Him saying, I feel you.
Yeah, and I really feel you.
And to succor His people, you know, and it's because I've been through withdrawals, and I've done all this crazy, unspeakable stuff that we do in our disease. I've done those things.
Yes.
So when somebody else is talking about it, it's like, bro, I hear you and I feel you. Whereas you might share, like if I share some of the stuff that I've done in my disease with somebody, they might be like, oh, what?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I shared with you, and it's like, bro, I feel you, dog, man. I did that same shit.
Yep.
Right? You know, that kind of thing, I think, is invaluable as part of, you know, that toolbox that we have. And I think we have a responsibility to use that, right? Just like it says in the big book, no longer how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Right? There is a reason for why I went through what I went through. And in part, it's because it was a learning experience for me, but it's also this kind of, you know, where I can reach out to the next guy and it's like, bro, I feel you. Man, I've been there and I've done that, and it's okay, man.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's such a real thing, you know, and like in my reality, right?
Yeah.
I did 7 years in prison, came from a long life of addiction and suffering from incarceration, you know, and I've experienced some really, really, really dark places.
Yeah.
And like I tell the guys, look, our lives are subjective. Yeah. Our sobriety is subjective. He's a blue collar job guy. This guy's come from prison. But guess what? We've all had suffered some dark places, right? So I can think of some dark places. I like to ask my guests, can you remember some dark places that you have been to, and maybe talk about it a little bit?
I love that you share that, because, you know, the way that I describe it is that our experiences, our lives are unique and universal all at the same time.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it might not be the same situations, but the darkness is the same. Like we've all been in that darkness. And for me, one of the most valuable things I think that we have are those step one, I call them step one moments.
Yeah.
And I had a counselor that told us as they were working with us, you take that step one experience, you put it in your front pocket, and I tell people this now, and you pull it out every day because it's easy to forget. And those moments are those moments where it was like, God, help me never to do this again, right? You know, those types of moments. And for me, like, we all have these step one moments, and the one that I share, you know, I'm kicked out of my house. I'm living at my mom's, but I have 3 kids, and they're over visiting with me at my mom's house and sometimes staying with me there. And I'm still using heroin and OxyContin and cocaine. And I'm, you know, trying to go into the bathroom to be able to get a hit, because in my mind I'm thinking I need this hit to be able to take care of my kids. And my 3 children are at the door, and they're trying to open the door, and I'm trying to hold this door shut because I need this hit, bro.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing that, I'm in the bathroom and I see myself in the mirror. I'm like, bro, what's doing? And that was like, that's a step one moment. And I can never forget that, because if I decide to go pick up and use again, that's where I'm going. I'm going right back there. And so those types of moments that happened, you know, as I went through that experience, that's what ended up driving me basically back to treatment, realizing, like, dude, you cannot help yourself. If you could, you would have fixed this. And instead, you're unemployed and your kids are scared to death. Like, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely not. Their kids.
Something wrong with their dad.
Yeah.
And they're afraid. It's like, you can't keep putting them through this, man. And so, you know, those kinds of moments were, you know, horrific, at the same time necessary for me to wake up. And it's like, dude, like, stop it. Yeah. Like, enough. Like we say in the Highlands, enough already. Enough already.
Enough, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's, you know, plenty of moments like that I had. And I think for a lot of us that do have children, it kind of centers around them, because there's this love that we have for our children that is undeniable. Like, nobody can tell me that I don't love my kids, but when I look at the behavior, I was like, bruh, it's like, what are you doing? And so that can become a motivating factor for many of us to say, okay, enough already. Like, I got to get help, and I can't do it myself. Like, I need God's help, and I need support of the brotherhood.
For sure, man. That's I appreciate you sharing that story, man. I've had situations and moments with my kids too, and a lot of times, we try not to remember those moments, and we try not to use those relive those moments. But for myself, and I'm not sure if this works for you too, but those moments I keep in my mind because they keep me and they drive me to not have those moments come up again, to where I'm applying that same hurt to my loved ones or anything. How important do you think that is to hold on to those memories and use them to keep you from relapsing?
I think it's critical, because the I guess the human brain, or our tendency naturally, is to try to forget those moments, or to justify those moments, or to minimize those moments, or to deny those moments. That's a huge part of this brain disorder that we have. And if I don't share my story with you or with another group, or when I'm running a group and share my personal stories, that's in part that's for the audience, but really that's for me. It's like, bro, remember that, like, this happened in your life. And so it's easy for us to forget those things if we don't recall them. And the Big Book is very specific in that process. This is not for, we've got to be careful not to slip into morbid reflection, right? Start to beat myself up for those things. But I'm sharing that in part for, whoever the audience might be, whether it's one person or a group of people, to share with them so they hear that and it's like, okay, I can relate to that, and he's been through that. But so much of it is just for me personally to remind myself, this is what happens in the disease. Like, when I'm actively in the disease, these are the things that happen. And we don't want to go back there. We can't afford to go back there. No. And so for me to take that step one out of my front pocket and figuratively remind myself of what it looked like in my disease, even though that might be over a decade ago, it's still, to refresh my memory is like, bro, don't forget that this is you in the disease. And that's why the newcomer, we hear this all the time, the newcomer is the most important person at the meeting. And it's in part because, they finally have gotten to the rooms and they're going to be surrounded by support. But for those of us that are in long-term recovery, it's like somebody stumbles into the rooms or into a treatment center, like, bro, how is it out there? Like, what's going on? It's like the disease still kicking
rough
ass,
out there,
taking names. It's
absolutely.
Still kicking ass. It's like, oh, thank you for reminding me, so I don't have to go out and see, if it's changed now, because now all of a sudden we got some sparkling water that's got alcohol and that can't be dangerous. I was like, I don't have to go in and investigate myself to see if that's different or not. That the disease is the same, and that newcomer, they come in and they share their story. It's like, oh man, it's still out there,
still there,
doing it.
Super important. And the stories and our realities that we've experienced are doing its work. It's funny you say that, because when guys come back, maybe once or twice, and I see them, I'm like, bro, how was it? It's rough out there. It's cold out there. Huh? Bring it in, bro. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're alive. Now, and I always tell them, I say, look, man, last time you missed something. So you need to pay attention a little bit more than you did last time. And let's run it up, brother.
I can't tell you the number of times, bro, that because, I work at the arena, and the arena, the Delta Center is right there. I drive past Pioneer Park on a daily when I go to, jump on TV and do a jazz broadcast. And I'm driving by there, and I see my brothers out there, bro.
Man, bro.
Struggling and, talking to themselves.
Yeah, man.
And all the stuff that is part of the psychosis. And my heart breaks, but my heart is so full of gratitude,
Absolutely.
Man, because I look at that, and that's me. By the grace of God,
absolutely,
I'm driving to my job,
man,
today, instead of me being on that street corner just talking to myself and yelling at people, like that so easily. And sometimes I'm like, God, like how is it not me? How am I the one? I'm no different than that guy.
Absolutely.
It's the same, you know. And by the grace of God today, I'm gonna drive from here to go do a radio show, and then later on tonight, the Jazz are playing OKC. I'm gonna go to the arena. I'm gonna do my job, and I'm gonna drive home to my house, and you know that's a gift. Like I don't deserve that.
Yeah.
It's like for us to think that somehow, I am entitled to these things. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm not entitled to anything. You know, if I were to get fair in my life, I would be so screwed, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, all of us who were thinking, oh, that's not fair and that shouldn't be happening. It's like, if I were to get fair, I would be locked up for the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It's because it's not about just the things that I actually got caught doing. Think of all the things that I never got caught for. It's like you would lock me. The society would lock us up for the rest of our lives, bro. For us to be out here just having this conversation, it's like, wow, by the grace of God, we're having this conversation.
Yeah, and like, dude, I for sure would have been thrown away too and locked up for a long time. So I like you may have known, I've been incarcerated a long time, and we got a large Polynesian community that are incarcerated, and the majority of them, I want to say 100% of them almost, are suffering from some type of addiction, right? And in any culture, in any family, I feel like, especially with the Polynesian, it's taboo to talk about incarceration. It's taboo to talk about addiction. Yeah. So because such of the old fa'asamoa, fa'alo, the respect, we don't talk about that with adults. Yeah. So I feel like that connection of possibly tapping with our elders is that line of communication is severed. Yeah. So how important do you think it is, man, before we start closing, pertaining to our Polynesian people, what advice would you give to the families who have someone who's suffering from addiction, who are just kind of, let just kind of cold shoulder him, right? He'll figure it out, or he may just go to prison and we don't got to deal with it, right?
There, so many of these things that and it's not exclusive necessarily to our culture, the Samoan culture. There's a lot of different ethnicities that the culture kind of mandates that we have this kind of, like, we don't talk about that kind of thing. And the term that comes to mind for me is, the traditions of our fathers, which is a Book of Mormon reference for those that are unfamiliar with that term. Yeah. But there are some traditions that are part of our culture that may not, mesh with a Christ-like behavior.
Absolutely.
And so I think that we always pay respect to the culture that we come from, and this is no disrespect to that. But at the same time, the culture of Christ has to come first.
For sure.
And so we look at, what was the example of our Savior? What was the example that our Heavenly Father has put down for us to follow? Yep. And I've referred to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous at times as the gospel for dummies, because it truly opened my mind and my heart to the principles that were being taught, truly being taught in the Bible, in the Book of Mormon. Because for me, I didn't, I had maybe glossed through or, read some portions of those books, the Bible and the Book of Mormon. But I remember when I got to Sand Island Treatment Center and I had my scriptures with me, right? And so as you go through the process, any residential treatment center, they go through your stuff and like, what is this? And so I remember they asked me, okay, what is this? I said, those are my scriptures. I need those. And they're like, you need those? I said, what do you need those for? I said, well, because I'm LDS and I need my, my Book of Mormon. And they're like, okay, so we're going to hold on to this and we're going to give you a different book. And they gave me the Big Book of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And they said, we want you to read this book. And then when you're ready, then we'll give you back your other books that you have. But this is going to be your priority. We want you to read this first. And again, I didn't know that, I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, even though I drank like alcoholic. I thought I was an opioid guy, right? I thought I was a drug addict. So even my other stints through treatment. I never read the big book because that was for alcoholics, and I'm not alcoholic, so I don't need to read that book. So now I'm at Sand Island Treatment Center, and we're doing big book study 2 times a day for 2 hours at a time, plus a 12-step meeting with an alumni in the evening. So we're hardcore big book thumpers in this program, similar to what the Renaissance Ranch is. And so I cut my teeth really on the big book in that environment. And so I start reading Bill's story, and I start reading the principles that are outlined in the big book of AA, and I'm like, damn, this is me, whether I'm drinking or using drugs. Like, this is my story. And then it outlines the path through that is this relationship with God, which I thought I had, but I didn't realize, okay, there's some nuances in here that I missed. As you're talking about, there's things that we miss. And there's still things that I, in a meeting or something, like, damn, it's like I didn't even think about it like that. Right? There's all these revelations that happen when we're ready to receive them. So, for me, that it becomes, that was how I really grew my spirituality. Because by the time they gave me, I had read the big book, and I was engrossed in those principles that it was teaching me. And, by the time they gave me my Book of Mormon back, I opened up the Book of Mormon, bro, and I was like, it was singing to me. And I'm named after Alma the Younger, right? Alema is the Samoan translation of Alma. And I'm relating to this brother like, dang, man, this is my man right here. Like, this is me, and I'm relating to it on a whole different level. But it's because of the big book of AA that really was able to help me understand what spirituality really was, what that personal relationship with God really was. And now, as I read the story of Alma the Younger and the sons of Mosiah, I'm like, wow. Like, like when Mormon and Moroni are getting all of these records together and abridging the final Book of Mormon and what stories to include, I'm like, thank you. Like, one of my sons is named after Moroni. It's like, thank you for including these stories in here to help me.
Absolutely.
Right? Because now as I read that, I'm like, okay, there are some specific messages in Alma's life or in Ammon's life that are directed right at me. Like, written for me in this day and time. Man. I was so grateful for that.
Man, so it sounds like, bro, what you're saying, bro, it's like the stories, just like our stories, are doing the same thing hundreds and thousands of years ago, bro, helping people apply it to their lives, man. Man, Alema, man, I appreciate you coming in.
Let me come back, bro.
Yeah, of course, for sure. We'll for sure get you back. I know you got that shoot you got to do too, man, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but, man, I appreciate you coming.
Absolutely.
It was such a good story. Hey, man, and I want you guys to make sure you guys are tapping into this episode. It's important for us, like Alema was saying, and like I'm saying myself, for us to leverage our past and use that story to be able to put it in somebody else's life so they can derive what they need to become the best version of themselves. Thank you so much, man. Until next time.
Right on.
Man, Uso, I appreciate you, man. I love you coming.
Love you, bro.
Dude, you got such a good way of telling your story, man. And I know it could probably go on forever.
Yeah.
So we for sure got to get you back, Us.
Yeah, because I've been on this track for a long time, and it's like there have been relapses along the way, like I've mentioned, and what did I miss, and those different things, but our stories are like, it's so important. Like, I'm looking at your pea, and I'm thinking, my story is here,
absolutely,
and I and for a reason, man, because my youngest son from my first marriage, Aiden, the one who's named after Moroni, he just got his pea, and when he got it done, there was a mindset that went into it. It's like, what needs to be included here? Yeah. That is a representation of my aina, and at the same time, my personal story. But as the key is that I have this and I can see it, and it reminds me,
absolutely,
similar to what I was talking about, taking that step 1 out. and looking at it. And it's not always the bad things that happen. It's like the blessings, you know, that God, the miracles that God has worked in our lives.
Man, I love that. You know, and my Alema, my be'a is like, you know, there's work that have already been done here previously from my past life.
Yeah.
And that those markings that were put on my body served its purpose at that time. And then as I got out of prison and became a new man, you know, this my Alema's fairly new, right? So, you know, I felt like, man, I wanted something to represent who I am now as a Afghasi. I'm Afghasi like you. You know, I'm half Samoan, half Mexican, right? And man, when I went and got my Alema, some of it is actually covering up old stuff,
right?
And I felt like it needed to be that.
Yeah.
It needed to do that. And it for sure represents who I am as a person now.
Yeah.
Man,
I love
appreciate
that.
you, Mauzo.
Absolutely, man.